Can FSU or Clemson make it back to the college football playoffs? FSU was in the first inaugural 14 college football playoffs, like nearly a decade and some change ago. And then you got Clemson, who recently hasn't really sniffed the college football playoff as late. So, Sam, I'm going to start off with you. Do you think that FSU or Clemson can make it into the playoffs this year?
They absolutely can. I don't think either of them will, though. And if one of them does, I'm going to be very careful with how I say this. If one of them makes it in, I'm not expecting a competitive game that will favor them. I'm not. So that's basically my thoughts in summary. I mean, Clemson has a ridiculously easy schedule, but that is kind of counterproductive in the sense that they could be 13-0. They could have a ton of one possession wins. Everyone knows they're not good. Everyone and their pet. And they win the ACC because they're 13-0 in Power 5. They basically have to get in by committee rules. And then Georgia shows up, somehow wins by an even larger margin than they did against TCU. And then it's like, well, why do you let them in? And it's because they have an easy schedule. Florida State's more interesting because they actually have a schedule. They have a tougher schedule. If Florida State goes 13-0 with that schedule, to me, there's no doubt they're at least top 8. Clemson could be the 15th best team in the country and go 15-0 with that schedule. Not 15-0, 13-0, depending on how Florida State pans out.
Man, I don't know. Like, Clemson doesn't really have the easiest schedule. You got to play Duke week 1, and I know you may be like, man, Duke ain't just the basketball school anymore, Sam. Like, they play football now. So it's like they got a really good team. And it's not like I'm saying like Duke is going to beat Clemson this year, but that game could potentially tell us, you know, if Clemson is the team that we believe them to be, because if that offense still struggles with Garrett Riley at the helm against Duke, I'm going to have some concerns. But I mean, you got FSU,
Yeah.
but then you also got to play Notre Dame, and then you got North Carolina, and then you got South Carolina. So, I mean, I don't really think their schedule is the easiest. I feel like if they do win, like, they'll be battle tested. But I think that FSU has the better overall roster, though. Like, maybe I'm just a little bit biased towards Florida State because I am a big fan of that 6'7" wide receiver they have named Johnny Wilson. Like, where the hell do you find a 6'7" wide receiver? Like, I don't know why the hell Arizona State let that go, but they crazy for letting that happen, man. Like, there's no way they should have let Johnny Wilson walk out of Arizona State like that. So, you bring in. So, who else did they get from the transfer portal, man? They got that receiver from Michigan State.
Keon Coleman.
Yes, you bring in Keon Coleman with Johnny Wilson. That's one of the best wide receiver duos in college football. That's a really nasty duo. And then you got Jordan Travis, who a lot of people are picking to win the Heisman Trophy this year. And I do think he has the squad around him that will allow him to do so, because they also have the best offensive line that they've had since their championship days a couple of years back under Jimbo Fisher. And their defense is going to be really good. They got a really fantastic secondary. They got a great group of linebackers, and they're really good up front. So I think FSU just has a more talented team this year than Clemson. Clemson, you know, they don't really utilize the transfer portal all that often. So it's like I still don't know how that offensive line is going to look. And they got a couple of good receivers that I like that have potential to be great, but I don't really know if their team is as talented as Florida State this year.
I'm in full agreement with you. I think Florida State has the better roster, hands down. They're power rated higher in my power rankings, and they're rated higher than Clemson in my actual top 25. They're the highest rated ACC team. I think their schedule plays to the disadvantage of Mike Norvell, because that road game against Clemson and the neutral set against LSU, I have a hard time seeing Florida State winning. But I think this is going to be a team that is going to get better throughout the year, and they top down do have that better roster. And by blue chip, No, but I mean, who to a certain degree, my mind's kind of like, who cares? Clemson hasn't looked good the past 2 seasons. And it's not just been offensively, but last year their defense didn't look good either in big moments. I mean, like in retrospect, Syracuse was a bloated team when they faced Clemson, letting them drive on you, letting Notre Dame pound the football, South Carolina just airing it out, Tennessee airing it out. So I agree with you. Florida State's roster, much better. I'd rather take that roster any day compared to Clemson's.